Hello, today we're going to be talking about arrays. Now, the Ruby docs identify an array as an ordered integer index collection of any object. And we're going to delve into what that means exactly. We're going to talk about data structure, what a data structure is. Of course, we're going to talk about what an array is. And finally, we're going to talk about iterating over arrays. Now, a data structure is a particular way that we organize information so they can be used efficiently. And arrays are essentially the most fundamental data structure in programming. And this idea is pretty much universal across most programming languages, and you'll find them used in a lot of programming languages. They're collections of data where each element is addressed by an arbitrary number called index position. So that's a lot of gobbledygook, but we're going to talk about what that means in more detail. And we're going to go through some of the fundamental array methods, including, the brackets, count, push, unshift, insert, and pop. And we're going to look into what all those do in detail. And so first, what we're going to do is that go ahead and open your terminal on your computer and start up a session of IRB. And what we're going to do is that we are going to kind of go through what happened. So in our IRB session, let's make some names. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a variable name, name underscore 1, Josh. So what we've done here is that we've taken three variables, name underscore 1, name underscore 2, name underscore 3, and set them to three strings, Josh, Lauren, and Mike respectively. And now what we're going to do is that we are going to start off with an empty array. And we're going to do that by typing in IRB, names equals square brackets. And this square bracket here is what kind of signifies that this is an empty array, that we're working with an empty array. So now, let's talk about how can we tell that this is an empty array. If names, the local variable names, is storing this empty array, what do we do to it? Like, what can we do to it? And we're going to talk about the first method. Previously with strings, we saw that strings had methods such as upcase, downcase, length. And what we're going to do, the first thing we're going to do, is that we're going to show you the count method. So if you type into your computer names.count, which means that we are going to be running the count method on the names array, what do we get? Well, we get 0 because this is an empty array and there are 0 things in it. Much like when we think about it, if we have a box, if we have an empty box, there are 0 things inside this box. So now that we have these bunch of names and we have this empty array, how do we get these names into the names array? Well, the simplest way to do that is using what we call the shovel operator. And what we do here is we type in names and 2 less than signs, and then name underscore 1. And what happens is that name underscore 1 now becomes the first thing in the array. So if you just type in names, if you just type in names, you'll see that the array currently contains the string Josh. Alternatively, there is a second way to get things into this array. We can use the push method. And here, we're running the push method on names, and we're passing name1 into push. These two techniques are identical in terms of they do the exact same thing. There's no difference between the two. So now, what we can do to verify that this works is that we can once again type in names.count. It's IRB. And when we do this, we can now see that this gives us back the value 1 as opposed to 0 before, because now we have one item in the array. which is exactly what we want. It's fantastic. So previously, with strings, we saw that we could access letters in a string by index. If I had this string hello, and I had a bracket 0 on the end of it, I knew that this was going to give me the string H. This kind of bracket notation, accessing things by index, works exactly the same way in arrays. So what we can do is that we can type in names bracket 0, and we will see that this will return us the string Josh. Because earlier we had pushed or shoveled in Josh, the string Josh, into the array. Now Josh is the entire first item in this array, and like we said earlier, computers start counting from 0, and therefore name 0 will give us the first item, which is Josh. We can also explicitly set the contents. So if I were to do names 0 equals Jeff, name 0 is now equal to Jeff. What the shovel operator push operator does, the shovel operator or the push method does, is it adds things onto the end. And we're going to talk about that, what that kind of looks like in a little bit. Other ways that we can access things in the array. So we said that name 0 gives us the first item. What also works is names.first. These two work exactly the same way. I often like using first because it's very easy for me to remember. Like, well, if it says first, it's going to be the first item. Whereas 0, I have to do that mental conversion in my head. It's like, well, 0, we start counting from 0, so 0 is first. Also, we can get names out by using the -1. We've seen here that -1 will give us the last one. So hello, if this was -1, will give us lowercase 0. Lowercase o. Whereas names -1 here will give us the last item. And here's the thing, because there's only one item in here right now, Jeff, first and last are the same thing. There's only one in here. And of course, if names.first works here, we know, well, we don't know, but we can surmise what names.last will give us the last item in this array. And again, because Jeff is the only item in this array, names.last will give us just the same one. Cool. So other things we can do? What we can do is we can add more things. So let's take this out here. Right now, our names array only has Jeff in there. So what we can do is that we can do a names shovel operator name_2. And then we could do names.push. Oops. I'm a little ahead of myself. Names.push. And we give it name_3. Again, using the shovel operator and the push method are exactly the same. And what happens is that now, if we do a names.count, we'll see that this returns us 3 names. Jeff, Lauren, and Mike. Remember, it's not Josh, because even though we did push in Josh at the beginning of this kind of lesson, we replace it directly with Jeff. And so, we now see that if we were just type in names and enter, we would get all 3 names. And they're all strings. And we can do a bunch of other things. There's also a lot of other names. Other methods. For example, we could do names.shuffle. Run this a couple times and see what you get. Feel free to pause the video here. And if we run this a couple times, we can see that what shuffle does is that it just kind of returns us the same array of the items, except now they're in different order. It shuffles it. It's kind of a randomized order. And each time we run it, we're probably going to get something different. There's always the chance that we'll get the same thing. And that's what shuffle does. So far we've talked about the bracket notation. We've used push. Push adds things onto the end, such as the shuffle, and so does the shuffle method. We also have unshift. Let us say we take, let's do names. Unshift, and we'll throw in the string Bob. Now what happens? Look at your output. Type in names again and hit enter. See what happens. Tell me what happens. Well, unshift means that we're putting things at the beginning. So now when we've unshifted Bob, our names array should be Bob, Jeff, Lauren, and Mike. And if we run a names.count on it, how many should we get? We should get 4. 4 items. 4 items. Cool. There's also insert, which is a fun method. What insert does is it lets us kind of insert, literally, something midway. So let's say if we did next, names.insert to Sally, what happens? What happens if we type in names and enter now? Well, we'll see that Sally has been inserted at the second position, or the 2 position. You might need to write out and do the math and do the kind of counting out. But we can see that we have inserted Sally exactly where we want to. And finally, the pop method. If we run, pop does not take an argument, but if we run names.pop, then we type in names again, we'll see that names is missing the last one. So if I'm correct, Mike will no longer be the last one, Lauren will be the last one. So finally, to kind of recap, arrays are our data structure. They're designed to hold a number of items, potentially limitless number of items. It's one of the simplest kind of data structures that we'll encounter, and it's something that we'll see across different programming languages. We can assign a value to any location in this array using the bracket notations. For example, what if for whatever reason I decided names 3 was now going to equal Luna, I can do that. You also access the value stored at any location using the bracket notation. Right now, if I did names bracket 0, I would get Bob, because Bob's the first thing in there. I add elements to the end of the array using either the shovel operator or the push method. I can remove elements from the end of it using pop. I can add elements to the front of it using the unshift method. The insert method takes 2 arguments. The first is the position where we want to insert, and the second is the thing we want to insert. Shuffle returns a copy of our array with the elements randomly jumbled up. And this essentially are some of the things you can do with arrays. There's a lot more you can do with arrays, and you can check that out by checking the Ruby documentation